The world is constantly changing, but most businesses fail to think about the future and fail to prepare for the future changes that are coming their way. And we have enough on our plate with our daily business without conjuring our crystal ball. Predicting the future is usually associated with fortune tellers. But what if I told you there's a process that you can follow, not to predict the future, but to prepare for future alternative scenarios and to devise future-proof strategies? Research shows that businesses which prepare for the future are 44% more likely to be outperformers in their particular business markets. This is a pretty strong incentive to go through a strategic foresight process, I would think. To understand how such foresight processes work, we first need to think about changes in our world. And one way to do this is to think about the VUCA world. In this video, I'm going to discuss the concept of VUCA, and I will introduce strategic foresight as a structured and systematic process with which you can anticipate and adapt to change. This will mean taking a long-term perspective on business and will allow you to better prepare for any disruptive changes. So let's go and delve deeper into VUCA. The context of VUCA essentially describes our changing environment using 4 different characteristics: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatility means that situations can change rapidly and unpredictably. Examples of volatility affecting tourism are shifting exchange rates and their effects on prices and profits. Another example affecting tourism is climate volatility, where weather patterns become unpredictable and tourists are therefore choosing to avoid certain destinations because of that level of unpredictability. They prefer to choose destinations where they can predict the weather, where they know they will have a certain number of days within their holidays with preferably nice weather. Nice weather is a key determinant for good holiday experiences, and tourists are therefore cautious of volatile weather conditions. Oil price volatility is another example of volatility affecting tourism, as airlines have adapted their schedules or have increased fuel surcharges in response to the current war in the Ukraine. Unexpected change is a constant in a volatile environment and therefore increases uncertainty. Uncertainty, the second characteristic of a changing environment in the VUCA concept, is the inability to reach complete knowledge about a particular topic, and occurs when we observe large number of elements with non-linear interactions. Because of these non-linear interactions, it is impossible to predict future developments, hence increasing the level of uncertainty. With linear interactions between elements, it is much easier to predict the future, so to follow the trend with regression analysis. With nonlinear relationships, this is not possible, and providing future forecasts is becoming increasingly difficult. In contrast to uncertainty, certainty involves finding patterns within a chaotic field of data, and is the first step towards reaching a certain level of knowledge. Uncertainty has a key influence on tourism as a sector. Current research has shown that economic uncertainty affects domestic tourism positively and outbound tourism negatively on a global sample. This means that more people travel within a country and less people travel to other countries. Yet the effects of economic uncertainty differ between upper middle economies and lower middle economies, with lower middle income economies experiencing a positive effect of economic uncertainty in both domestic and outbound tourists. So more people going on holiday. This unexpected result could be due to people leaving the country to search economic prosperity elsewhere. And in a first stage, this is counted as outbound tourism rather than migration. The third element in a VUCA world is complexity. Complexity arises when you have independent elements that react interdependently from each other. They are separate entities at the beginning, but they react with interconnectedness. So they react with each other and depend on each other in their interactions. In such an interconnected and networked environment, it becomes very difficult to determine cause and effect. So we don't know what has caused something, and we don't know what the effect will be, because of this unpredictable relationship between prior independent elements in a system. In a complex world, the interconnectedness between the different parts is so high that the same external conditions and the same inputs can lead to very different outcomes. And these outcomes cannot be known beforehand. This brings us to chaos theory, in which very small causes can have big effects. So I'm sure you've all heard of the butterfly effect, where a flap of a butterfly wing in Brazil could potentially cause a tornado in Texas. So seemingly independent elements, the butterfly and the weather in Texas, are interdependent, are connected. We don't know how these interactions happen, so it is very difficult to predict possible outcomes of interactions in the future. The final factor in a VUCA world is ambiguity. In a VUCA world, the meaning and interpretations of situations vary. They cannot be definitively resolved by rules or by processes. So two people watching the same event, going through the same situation, can have two very different interpretations of reality. I'm sure you've been in situations where you've gone somewhere with a friend or a colleague and you've experienced the same situation, but you have very different interpretations of that particular situation. This ambiguity has led to the saying that the world is not black and white, but consists of various nuances of grey. When thinking about the future, it is therefore important to be open to different interpretations of a particular situation. This ambiguity makes coming to business decisions more difficult, because you have to take different perspectives, different factors, and different interpretations into account when coming to a decision. What I wanted to get at with this short overview of the VUCA world, or of a VUCA world, is that the traditional way of developing strategies, as followed in the industrial era, is not appropriate for VUCA environments. Strategy development needs to evolve from resisting change to embracing it, by creating agile organizations with high capacity for foresight and high capacity for adaptation. Uncertainty and the VUCA world will affect people in different ways. Matt Devella describes this in context of the VUCA world in his axis of uncertainty, in which he combines levels of preparedness with emotions. In this axis of uncertainty, there are four possible characters. Businesses that show high levels of emotion when confronted with uncertainty and high level of unpreparedness. They choose not to acknowledge the change that is coming their way. They stick their head in the sand and hope to avoid to make a decision until it is too late and they have missed the boat. I need to add a disclaimer here. Apparently, ostriches do not actually stick their head in the sand. Instead, they lay their eggs in holes in the ground. And when they turn the eggs, it appears as if they're sticking their head in the sand. So apologies to the ostriches for using them as a bad metaphor. Then there are businesses that are underprepared but remain calm. They have become comfortable in their current situation and have become complacent. They fail to recognize the need for change until they have no choice and they have to react rather than be proactive. In this quadrant, we have businesses that panic but are prepared. Panic leads to premature strategy adjustments, to changes that are merely weak signals, so that might not develop to change factors affecting the business. Panic creates a level of urgency, which means that you are less proficient and effective. And it also increases the level of uncertainty in your organization. While it is really important to monitor weak signals, changing a strategy for weak signals is premature. The last quadrant is the sweet spot. This is where we want to be. The most important skill for us is to adapt to a changing environment. So to know what is coming our way, to monitor change factors, and to change strategy accordingly. This means that we have to be self-aware as persons and as institutions, and that we have to be open to criticism. The sooner that you get used to uncertainty, the sooner you can adjust, adapt, and change accordingly. I know this is not easy, and my aim is to support you in this process. So continue to follow this channel. As highlighted in the first part of the video, strategy development needs to embrace the VUCA and situation or environment that we are in, and need to consider disruptive forces that might affect your business. Strategic foresight is a process that you can follow to think proactively about the future and enact change accordingly. Taking such a long-term perspective allows you to get a head start in understanding change and its impact on your organization, ensure that your strategy is agile and future-proof, and allows you to gain competitive advantage. The first step in future preparedness is to explore and describe the change factors affecting the tourism sector. The horizon scanning process provides you with information and analysis on the main potential risks, threats, opportunities, and emerging issues, and help you to determine their impact on your organization. So if you have recommendations for change factors that you want me to address in the videos, please tell me in the comments below. The second stage of the strategic foresight process is the scenario development stage. Based on the horizon scanning process, you develop scenarios, you develop different scenarios of alternative futures. What could happen in the future and how might it affect my organization? It is difficult to accurately predict what the economic, social, environmental and technological conditions will be for tourism in the next few years. And it is almost impossible to predict what the situations will be in the medium to long term. In addition, when you think back to ambiguity, as we discussed in the VUCA section of this video, different people will have different interpretations of particular change factors and will favor one scenario over another. Also, they will have different preferred options. So developing scenarios is not usually done by one person only. It's a discussion that happens between people and takes different perspectives into account. Often the scenarios themselves are less important as an outcome of the scenario development process. What is often more important is the discussions that happen during the scenario development process. The third step in the strategic foresight process is to develop long-term strategies based on the scenarios that you've developed in the previous step, in order to prepare for change before it affects you. Organizations that have long-term strategies taking different change factors into account establish a foundation for future success. Combining external change factors and your preferred situation in a set of possible scenarios provides you with a holistic perspective on the future of your organization, and allows you to strategically position your organization in respect to the different scenarios. Needless to say, the final step in the strategic foresight process is to act, to implement the strategies that you've developed. But these strategies need to be put into action plans, short-term, but also mid to long-term action plans. And these action plans need to be implemented, need to be checked, and need to be evaluated and adapted as and if needed. Strategic foresight is not a one-off activity. It is a continuous process of exploration, imagination, design, and action. The thing is, even after learning about the strategic foresight process and the VUCA world, this is probably not enough, and you still have a lot of work ahead of you. You probably still need more information on the change factors that might affect your tourism organization or your tourism business. On this channel, I explore technological, social, environmental, and political change factors and how they affect tourism. I provide tools that you can use to make sense of the future, and I discuss strategies to deal with the future. My goal is to provide you with a long-term perspective on change affecting tourism and to empower you with insights and skills so that you can adapt to a changing environment, so that you and your company become more resilient and more sustainable. So make sure that you watch the next video on this channel so that you get the results that you want. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.